Welcome to episode 10 of Wisco Legacy. I am your host, Corey Kundert. Today we have my former high school wrestling coach. He was a former school psychologist and now he's the interim principal for the Monroe High School, Mr. Jeriamy Jackson. He joined us. We talked all of those things. We talked about wrestling, school psychology, education, and the Monroe community as well. So really excited for you guys to listen into Wisco Legacy today. As always, check out our website, wiscolegacy.com. We have articles and the videos and audio versions of the podcast are on there. We're also on YouTube and all the podcast platforms. Go check that out. If you would like, feel free to rate and review the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. That would mean the world to me. So with that being said, let's dive right into episode 10 of Wisco Legacy with Mr. Jeriamy Jackson.
Hi, I'm Jeriamy Jackson, interim principal of Monroe High School, and this is my Wisco Legacy.
Coach, welcome to Wisco Legacy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on it.
Yeah. So, Coach, you grew up in Edgerton, Wisconsin here. Can you talk about growing up in Edgerton and what that community was like?
Sure. It was a good little town. It's not a whole lot different than Monroe, Wisconsin, where I'm currently principal at. It was a lot smaller, about 3,000 people at the time that I grew up. So, but it was, I guess, a good Wisconsin, wholesome little town. We had all the normal little festivals that you have in a small town. Everybody knew everybody else. A lot of good community involvement with the schools and the sporting teams. And it seemed like it was a great place to grow up. I'm sure you can say the same thing. I know you can say the same thing about Monroe as well. So it was a good town, mainly a rural farming community, which was nice. And that's something I did a lot of when I was growing up too. I didn't grow up myself on a farm, but I had really good friends where I spent most of my time on their farms working it or just hanging out. So that was kind of a lot of my childhood.
Yeah, you see a lot of that in Wisconsin, a lot of small towns with a lot of farms, and definitely around here we have a lot of that too. So
Right.
What were you involved in as a kid? What kind of sports or different things there?
Yeah, when I was a kid, there wasn't a lot of structured sports. We did a lot more going out to the end of we had a subdivision that we lived at. And there was an open lot at the end of the subdivision, but all the kids would gather there and we'd play baseball and football and just be outside and, probably got in a little trouble too, I'm sure. But, exploring down by there is a little Saunders Creek that was near our house too. But we left the house in the morning and never came back till dark. That's just how it was. The only really organized thing as I was growing up is Little League. They had Little League and was in that, and that was a lot of fun. We lived outside of Edgerton about 2 or 3 miles. So I have one younger brother. He's 3 years younger than me, and we would just ride our bikes into town to go to practice all the time. So that was really the only organized thing. There was some, I was in wrestling when I was young. My dad was the wrestling club coach at that time. So he made sure that we were in wrestling from a very young age and going to tournaments, but it wasn't like it is now. And there wasn't a tournament every single weekend, Saturday and Sunday. There was a tournament here and there. So I think there's a lot more opportunity for us just to be kids. But we also got out of the house. We also were all over the place, just exploring and doing things. So it was fun. I had a good life growing up.
Yeah, you don't see that as often. I grew up in just outside of Monroe too, and I was outside all the time, running around on bikes and all that stuff. And Today we got technology, got iPads and all that stuff that kids are getting glued to. So,
right.
But the society's changed a little bit from back then too. So that could be part of it as well.
Definitely, kids are more connected now. That's for sure. I mean, that's how they socialize. It's not anything we know how to do really, but that's how they do it.
Yeah. All right. So after high school, you went to UW La Crosse. Can you talk about why you decided to go there?
So kind of a weird story. I was actually supposed to go to UW Madison. I had my room assignment with one of my best friends from high school, and we were all set to go to UW Madison. And then he was a really good football player. He was a tight end on our football team, and he got offered a full scholarship to Illinois State. Later in the journey as we were applying here, obviously after we already had our room assignments. So he ended up going to Illinois State, and then I got a call from the coach at La Crosse talking about wrestling. And so I hadn't really thought of it. I mean, I was a pretty good wrestler in high school, but I didn't really think of wrestling in college. That's a whole different ball game there. So we both then took different paths. He went to Illinois State. I went to UW lacrosse. UW lacrosse. I only ended up wrestling a couple years there. They had a really competitive team, which was awesome. But in college, as you can imagine, it's different than high school. It's hard enough in some high schools where there's not a whole lot of like a huge fan base that follows you. In wrestling is one of those sports that you really do it because you love it. You don't really do it because you're getting all this fan attention and everything. Well, college is, times 100 because there's like 5 people in the gym, maybe some parents. And we get up super early, 2-a-day practices, and it was just rough. So I had a lot of fun with it. I still have a lot of good friends from the team that I don't talk to that much, but we still keep in touch. And it's good. I mean, it made this in wrestling. It's the work ethic thing. It's the feeling pride in what you do. But it's when you're away from your family, away from your friends at a college, it's even harder to do, especially if you need to lose any weight or have any dedication to the sport itself. It gets a lot harder.
Yeah, I had Cody Endress on a few weeks ago. He is the head coach for Lodi, and he wrestled in lacrosse, and he talked about the balance between wrestling and academics and social life. It's a really hard balance.
Right.
Balance all that. I know you only wrestled a couple of years there, but can you talk about trying to balance all that?
Yeah, I'm sure Cody said too, but it is tough. I mean, when you had classes to go to, plus, like I said, at that time we were doing practice or weightlifting session in the morning, and we'd have practice in the afternoon too. And then, like I said, get into all your classes, and then people, it's college, right? They want you to go out and they want you to have fun. And if you're trying to keep your body in any shape, that's not the thing to do. So it's tough to balance all of that. And then you throw in some Saturday tournaments and getting on a bus and driving through a bunch of cornfields in Iowa. It makes it tough I think that's one of the major reasons, honestly, that I didn't go past 2 years. I'm like, you know what, wrestling, I love it. It's been a thing in my life forever, but I also want to graduate. Mm-hmm. So I had to really temper that with, why am I really in college? And it was to get a degree and to move on in my life. And, as much as I love wrestling, it's not, at least for me, something that there was a future in. I'm not going to the Olympics. I'm not going to a club wrestling, and I'm not going to be WWF or something like that. So it is a tough balance there, but the risk of doing that is, it has some good rewards to it though, because there's a lot of lifelong friends from it. And as you know, it creates a lot of lifelong lessons too.
Yeah. Can you talk about some of the lessons you learned throughout the sport of wrestling and how that's helped you moving forward?
Yeah. I always say that, I think every sport says this, but wrestling is a family, right? And I think those relationships with your teammates, but also in my experience in coaching with you guys, the teammates or the kids' parents as well. Mm-hmm. I think everybody just comes together, and it is a pretty tight-knit little group. I remember when I was coaching, we did a lot of things together. When we went to tournaments, hung out together. It's a long day. I mean, as you know, when we go to a tournament, it's not like a basketball tournament or a volleyball tournament where you play a game, it takes an hour or two and then you're done. We sit there from, we leave on a bus at 5:30, 6:30 in the morning, weigh in, and then you wrestle 3, 4, up to 5 times, and you sit there almost all day long, and you have nothing else to do but hang out with that group of people and the parents as well. So it creates that family atmosphere. It also, in just doing what I said, creates, you got to have some endurance and perseverance, right? It's easy. I've heard a lot of people say, well, I don't wrestle because it takes too long. Well, yeah, it does. And you gotta be ready, and you gotta be able to keep your mind in the right mind frame to be able to wrestle in those tournaments. Because if you quit because it takes too long in between matches, then you're pretty mentally weak right there. Mm-hmm. Creates a good work ethic too, because it is not fun. I've said my whole life, although I was probably best at wrestling, it was not my favorite sport, right? I love playing football because football was fun to me. Wrestling was like, you got the snot beat out of you a lot. You had to push yourself further than you ever thought you could push yourself. and it didn't always feel good. I did lose a bunch of weight when I was wrestling, and that's not fun either, to be able to push yourself and beat yourself up and have to watch what you eat and not be able to just, your friends are going out to Pizza Hut or McDonald's or whatever, and you can't do any of that, or even sitting in a lunchroom, and just being mindful of that. But what that creates is that discipline in yourself, right? It creates that work ethic, that discipline, and being able to, apply it to later in your life. You know what, I can get through this, right? I got a poster hanging in my wall. I don't know if you remember this, but if you've wrestled, you can do anything. And that was a Dan Gable quote. So yeah, it actually says, if you wrestled, everything else in life seems easier. Yeah, that's what it is. So yeah, and that's true. As I get further away from it, I kind of forget some of those lessons, but it's good to remind me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you talk about some of those long, grueling days. I mean, spending countless hours in gyms on the weekends and stuff, and those bonds that you create are, some of my best friends are some of my teammates I had, and some of the guys that they wrestled in mat rats and stuff growing up. So,
right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. All right. So can you talk about what you majored in and why you decided to major in that?
Sure. I actually, I went to lacrosse not knowing what I was going to do. And that's pretty common. At least it was then. It's probably not the smartest thing to do because you're spending money on a college education. But my initial major, once I got into it, was elementary education. I was going to be an elementary ed teacher. There's a big market for it at the time, especially being a male. They don't have a whole lot of male elementary ed teachers. And my funny story is that I have two parts of it. One is, as part of doing, elementary ed, you start taking some basic psychology courses, and those are super interesting. And that's what got me interested in it, especially when I got into abnormal psychology, when they started talking about, different diagnoses and things. So that really sparked my interest. But on the other side of it, there was, back at that point, you really had to be proficient in music, and music is not my wheelhouse at all. So I had to take this, I don't know if it was called Music Foundations or whatever. A couple of the other wrestlers were in it with me, and we struggled. It was just, we had keyboards, and you had to, so imagine I'm a decent sized guy, like on a wrestling team, right? And I was standing up on a little stool in front of the class, and the teacher made you sing like the ta ti tas, like up and from it. And it was a little rough doing that. I could probably do that, but then when it came to the keyboard, I had no idea. And it wasn't like I wasn't trying. I actually got a keyboard, and I had a person try to teach me at home, but it wasn't something for me. So I ended up squeaking through that first course, and then there was a whole nother course. So I wasn't going to get through that one. So that's when I decided to switch majors. Went into psychology, and my minor was sociology. But I'm glad I did. I mean, it turned into a whole, as we'll probably get into this, but the rest of my career with it. So it was a good, I don't know if the saying everything happens for a reason, but that probably did, because I got all the way through my field experience in teaching. I was teaching in Sparta Elementary. So I got that far. It was just the music piece that got me.
I have a very similar story, actually. So I went to Edgewood, and my first semester I was going or my first year, I think it was, I was going for elementary education as well. And I had to do a class where I had to play the recorder. Just like back in second or third grade. And I struggled with that as a freshman in college. I'm like, there's no way I can keep going on this. So it's interesting that both of us have the music piece that took us away from elementary ed.
Yeah, and I'd like to be musical. It's just not me.
Yeah, right. Same here. All right. So after lacrosse, you spent some time in the corporate world. Is that correct? You went and worked at Mercy for a while?
Yeah. So my first job was what they call a mental health technician out of college. One of the things I figured out is a psychology degree doesn't get you an automatic entry into anything. But in the field, I got hired as a mental health technician at Mercy Hospital in Janesville. I kind of mixed the two there because it's called Mercy Options, is the psych portion of it. But it was actually a locked psych ward. It was had an addictions unit, an adult unit, and then an adolescent and child unit. my primary placement with my background in college was adolescent and child, but I worked in all three different units, and it was a lot of facilitating groups, doing some CNA type duties. I had to be trained. I took like I don't know what it was, a 9-week or 10-week course in CNA. So you had to be trained in that kind of stuff too. I actually got trained in drawing blood because that was part of it, to be a phlebotomist. It was a mix of the mental health part with psychology, and then you're also taking care of the patients at that entry level. So I did that for about 5 years. In the last 3 years, I did it concurrently with going back to school to be a school psychologist. So in Whitewater, they had it set up really well. That's where I went to get my master's. So all the classes started in the late afternoon to evening, like 4 to 6:30. So I was able to work from 7 a.m. to 3 every day, and then go right to Whitewater, do the class, and then do that all week long. So it worked out pretty well. There was some long days, but at least it was able to be done. And my interest in school psychology was because in working in this program, I kind of moved up a little bit as I worked, and became the school liaison between the hospital and the school district of Janesville. So they would send me out when they're having tough kids that they need to deal with, that kind of stuff. So, and I met some other school psychologists in doing that, and then the psychiatrist that I worked with kind of gave me a push to go do something more than what I was doing at the current time. So, and I'm glad they did. So,
Yeah, school psychology is really important. Can you talk about the importance of, in your eyes, the importance of school psychology?
Yeah, I think it's even more important now, because what we're seeing in schools is there's a lot of mental health issues that are happening with students as well as staff. So my initial experience when I got into school psychology, this is my 21st year. So this is back in 2001 when I started. There was a lot of testing and assessment. That's part of a school psychologist's job, is to do some assessments to qualify students for special education. So that's what a lot of it was in the beginning, but we worked kind of hard to change that, because we didn't want just to be that test carrying person, right? We wanted to be more useful in schools. So we changed it to try to touch more students so we're not just qualifying for special ed and just dealing with that population, but helping all students by going into the classrooms and working with them and doing some brief counseling for any mental health issues. In schools, it's really not our place to do that long-term counseling, but we can triage and get people back to where they're able to function in school, and then hopefully back in the classroom, and then refer out to other counselors and psychologists in the community. So, but for me growing up, and maybe even, well, you might know this because I was your coach, but a lot of people don't even know there was a school psychologist, right? So, but they are there. They're kind of working behind the scenes, and they're doing a lot better job trying to get out in front of people now, instead of just dealing with that very, very small population. And like we started out saying, the mental health needs, especially after COVID here, are really ramped up. So those people, along with school counselors, are super important to us right now. They're really helping our kids work through some struggles that they have, and their staff, so that they can get an education.
Yeah, that's an important piece. Since we've been in these COVID times, you definitely see a lot more people struggling with that. Even myself. I mean, I work at home, and just working at home, I'm here in my house almost 24 hours a day, every day, and it's a struggle. Like I have to get out and go to the grocery store just to have some mental clarity and something different. So, I can imagine students sitting at home on laptops doing classwork all day, every day was probably a pretty big challenge.
Yeah, just humans in general just need interaction. You do. Mm-hmm. I mean, even people who say that they're introverts or they don't want to, you do. You just need general human interaction. And one of the biggest things we're seeing is for students and staff, honestly, but students more so, because they were more apt to just kind of stay in a room the whole time, is that then they forget how to function with people, right? And then it makes it really hard and creates a lot of anxiety, because they weren't very good at it, and it was uncomfortable, and then they didn't have to do it. So now it's really uncomfortable. So it's trying to undo some of that and provide some of those soft skills that they're going to need to go into work or to a college or anything, because we can't just function from home forever, right? Like you said, you need that, or else you go into a bit of a funk.
Hmm. Absolutely. So you spent quite a few years as a school psychologist, and then you decided to get into school administration. Can you talk about
Right.
the decision to get into that?
Sure. So, my first 12 years were as a school psych, and I had halftime at Abraham Lincoln Elementary and then halftime at the high school. That's what I did for the first 7 years of that 12. So kind of split my time there. I worked with primarily the little ones. They have, that's a tougher, I don't want to say tougher, but it's a different type of job than at the high school, because little kids can't often express how they're feeling with their words, right? So they express through their actions. So it comes out as like having tantrums and fits and that kind of stuff, in which it is harder to figure out their learning needs because they can't tell you. In high school, it's a bit different. You can talk to them, when I started my career, I thought I wanted to be with the younger kids, because that's went along with that elementary teacher kind of idea. And I still did love that. Love that setting, and the little kids, it's pretty rewarding. I mean, they're pretty loving people at that time and accepting, and you're like I don't know, like a big mentor to them at that time. And high school wasn't really, I hadn't really even thought about it. But when I got to high school, I met lots of really cool kids, right? Really cool students, including yourself, right? So it was, I started to like it more and more. I could actually have good conversations with people. I could work through some things. We didn't do as much of the testing and placement, and that it was more of the, like, how can we work through these issues and get you help, whether it was mental health or academics or anything else, honestly. And then coaching wrestling in there also got me to experience a little bit different side of it, because I had people who weren't coming to my office with problems, but it was students who were working to get to a different goal. So that was pretty rewarding for me.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of things you can transfer between the school psychology piece and the coaching piece. I know in
Yeah.
wrestling specifically, there's a lot of like mindset training that could go into it, and all sorts of things around that. And you're dealing with 14 to 18-year-olds when you're coaching, so there's a lot of different personalities you're working with. Yeah, can you
Right.
talk about kind of utilizing your school psychology skills on the coaching side?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I purposely did. Maybe I did subconsciously, but um, yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. Like you said, it's a grueling sport. It's a lot of mental toughness. I think that's where it comes in the best. Is it trying to get people to work towards goals even when it's tough, right? It's easy, easier, I guess, to coach people who are super talented, it comes really easy to them. It's not so easy. And those are the people that need coaches the most, for kids who it doesn't come easy to them. Like they want to quit, or outside of school, things are rough for them too. And they have a million excuses to quit. Those are the students that I had talked to our assistant coaches, Mr. Guth and Mr. Witt, a lot about. Those people need us more than we need them on the team. But everybody has a role, right? And that's one of the things that it's, I think, not unique to wrestling, but it is when you're getting beat all the time, right? Because it's you can't mix in with the team and kind of hide with that. You still have to go out on the mat, and your goal might be to not get pinned, right? Or to not give over 8 points. So that kind of stuff, just understanding that is your role, understanding that even though I look at this guy over here and maybe he's going to state every year, maybe he's getting all the accolades, but they can't help us win alone. Like I'm doing my job over here, even though my record might not show it. So that kind of mindset, you're talking that mindset, right? Everybody has their role on the team, and then getting a team to work together. I mean, I think some of my favorite moments through coaching, we're seeing some of those wrestlers, right? Not the ones that always did well, but those wrestlers that did their job, and how the team rallied around them when they didn't get pinned, or when they had a minor decision rather than a major, because that helped us win matches, right? It's a different game when you get down to regionals and sectionals and that kind of stuff. Then you focus a little bit more on the individual. But that kind of stuff, getting people to to get their mind in the right place to be able to help the team and understand that it's not about just winning and losing, right? It's about working harder to do your job, but also in the practice room, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and you being in the practice room every day, you see kids grow too throughout their career. I mean, just looking at me, my first 2 years, I was thrown on varsity, 189 and 215, and I struggled for sure my first couple of years. And then by my junior year, I started to win some more. Can you talk about progress or seeing that growth through students and athletes as they're going through their wrestling career?
Yeah. So there's the physical growth, right, of people getting stronger and I guess a little bit more mature and a little bit more sure of their body. I mean, that's how we mature. But then there's the mental growth, which I think is a little bit more important because it's, like I said, it's easy to quit, right? I've seen it 1,000 times. I've seen people come in, even people who have a lot of physical talent, they just can't handle the mental part of it. They just quit and give up. But that growth from freshman year, and that's when I saw them, right, from freshman to senior year, is pretty awesome to see when kids come in and they really don't know what you're doing. You go to these rough practices and aren't seeing success initially for most people. But then you really have to celebrate the heck out of when you are seeing success. Even if it's, let's say you win 5 matches in a year, which is sometimes common, right, as a freshman, especially when you're thrown on varsity.
Yep.
I mean, you're this young guy who doesn't have a lot of strength yet, and you're out there against seniors and juniors. And like I said earlier, you're asked to do a job, right? Try to stay off your back. Try not to get beat by as many points. And you won't get many wins, but those wins you do get, you have to celebrate the heck out of and pump it up. And sometimes it's not just about the win too. It might be about the takedown in the match. It might be about the turn or the reversal or whatever in the match. You got to pump those up. And everybody's got their thing in wrestling, right? I mean, it's not like we don't run a system in wrestling. Everybody might have a fireman's carry, like that's your go-to, right? You might have a cradle, you might have a switch, you might have whatever it might be. You can be good at your thing and you can set that up. And I think that's the cool thing too, is that you need to individualize it too as a coach, and recognize that somebody might be good at one thing or better at one thing than something else. So taking advantage of that too. So that's part of that growth. If you can find a thing and find success for someone in an area and build on it, that's how that growth seems to go a little bit faster and better, right? I mean, you could criticize every one of us in some aspect of wrestling, right, myself included, but that's not what it's about. It's about trying to grow people and show growth over time.
Yeah, playing to their strengths and pumping people up. You're definitely building confidence. I think confidence is a huge thing when you step on the mat. I know early on in my career, I didn't have hardly any confidence, and as I started to get more takedowns and do a little bit better in the practice room, that confidence built. And then you and Coach Guth, Coach Witt would praise us and try and really build our confidence. So we were more confident when we stepped on the mat during a match.
Yeah.
Do you have any big memorable moments from your coaching career? Some of the things that stick out to me are more on the team aspect of things from when I was in high school. So we wrestled the Verona Duels tournament.
Yeah.
I think my senior year we won that tournament, and Aaron Hesgard had a really big win against Slinger to propel us to victory in that one, and that kind of led us to winning the tournament. And Gavin Wells had a lot of awesome matches throughout his career. Winning bi-state definitely sticks out to me too. There's some big memorable moments for your coaching career.
Yeah, those are a couple of them that you said. I mean, there's actually a lot of them for me. You can easily go to Gavin winning bi-state. I mean, that was super good, especially because for those that don't know, I mean, Gavin's a kid that didn't wrestle before high school. He was messing around, and that was, I think, my first year as head coach. He was messing around down in the middle school with Mason Goff, and I was messing around with Gavin and telling him, if he went out for wrestling, that I'll get him to the point where he's going to beat Mason, which they had this little rivalry. But then you talk about 4 years later, he's winning by state, the 64 team tournament. So it's not like you have to start super young. It helps, right? It helps to have that experience, but you don't have to. So it's those moments that, that kind of moment is really good. Obviously when for me, it's not just winning though, because as you know, especially with bi-state or even conference, and it goes along with what we just said about people knowing their roles on their team. If someone else gets to third place or even fifth place or seventh place, that's a huge accomplishment for people, for them, relative to them, and they got to be proud of that, and they got to celebrate that. So for me, I say this a lot. So the one that really stands out to me is we won conference at home. God, I don't even remember when that was, but it was the team with Eric, Scott Tim, Kenny Konopacki, those guys on that team. And we won conference at home. But Scott Tim was one of those role player wrestlers. I would consider him. He wasn't the guy that was winning every tournament. He was pretty good, but he wasn't the top one, you say, that's qualifying for state. But that tournament, he wrestled out of his mind, and he won conference tournament. And that, I just remember the gym exploding for him, because he's in the finals for one thing, but then he won the finals. So, and I'm sure if you ask Scott, like, what's his favorite memory, that's got to be right up there. But for me, I say that's my favorite one, because it was someone, and maybe that's my underdog mentality, right? It was someone that you didn't expect to do it. And when that happens, and it's happened for you in matches too, I'm so proud of you guys, because that's like, to me, that's harder than the person is expected to be there. Right. Don't get me wrong, there's a ton of pressure on being expected too, but seeing that growth and working through all that and then having it come to fruition, that's amazing.
It is, for sure. I actually had Scott on. He's going to be the episode right before you, and we talked about him winning conference, and it's his highlight of his career for sure. We spent a bit of time talking about how wrestling has impacted him as well. So that's really great. So you had to make a hard decision to leave coaching wrestling. You put a lot of time and effort into the Cheesemaker program, but you were moving into school administration. Was it challenging to move out of that role?
Yeah, it was. I knew it was something I had to do, though. I had coached 12 years in total, 3 as an assistant and 9 as a head coach. But then and I didn't talk about this earlier when I talked about being a school psych, but as I got further in my school psych career, I started taking on more administrative type duties within the school, largely because I'm not tied to a classroom or bell. So I would help out a lot in the office. And then as I started working with administration, I figured, well, I'm doing a lot of this anyway, I might as well do it. But part of that is, once you do it, then you're no longer allowed to coach, because you're tied to whatever might happen in the school and a lot of after school meetings. And it wouldn't be fair to either position. I wouldn't be able to put the time into coaching, and I wouldn't be able to put the time into administration, and they wouldn't let me anyway. So that was a tough decision. And I remember my last banquet was not easy, talking to the families and wrestlers. It was, like I said, it was like my family. So it was like I was leaving them, and that was super, super hard. But it never totally leaves you. I'm not able to go back as much as, well, hardly any anymore, because it's really hard. I need to get to a lot of different stuff too, but it's fun still going back to matches and watching everybody. And when I step out of my office at the end of the night, seeing everybody running the halls in the winter is fun. Not that I want to run with them, but just remembering that and doing that. So it was a super tough decision, but I'm in a good spot now, and it's time and Coach Witt was with me the whole time and still coaching. So the program's in awful good hands.
Absolutely. Can you talk about transitioning from the school psychology position to administration? It sounds like you were doing a little bit beforehand, but what was that transition like?
It's different. I went from school psych to an assistant principal, which is primarily discipline, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm used to that on the coaching end of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't. So as a school psych, that's not really about discipline as much as it is figuring out what's going on and how you can support and help students, um, which I did try to bring into that assistant principal role. I didn't want it to be just like I'm screaming at kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
They also need to have some support in what's going on, because no matter what they're doing, usually that they're getting in trouble for, there's a reason for why they did it. People don't just do things most of the time anyway for fun. They act out in a certain way because they're not a certain need isn't being met, and that's, I think, upon us to figure out what that is and give them support and help. Because whether you're coaching or in a school psych or principal or assistant principal, it's our job to support people, right? And I don't think it's a job just to yell at them and beat them up and expect that, yep, now you're going to get better because I screamed at you, right? It's that doesn't work that way, at least in my mind. Sometimes people might need a tune up, right? When things aren't going the right way, but most times we got to be there to support them and help them out. So that is very similar, but the AP role is, like I said, much more disciplined. You don't get to see the wide variety of students really that I did before, because you get a lot of students coming to you that have a lot of discipline issues or whatever issues that they might have. So in that role, like I said, I tried to change it a bit. I don't know if I was super successful at it, because you still have to deal with the discipline, but to be out to be in with a lot of students. And that's still how I try to hold myself, is to interact with the students as much as possible from all walks of life. I try to, whether it's coaching, whether it's school psych or principal, I think a principle I live by is relationships. Just being there for people, being approachable, trying to be approachable, and trying to understand them and offering support and help. I mean, I think relationships is huge no matter what you do. I always talk about, for me, when I get into even hiring, I'm not as concerned about your skills, because I think people can build their skills, as I am about people's personality and how they're going to interact with each other, and interact with me and with students, because that a lot of times is something that isn't able to be taught, at least not as easily. So that relationship piece is, no matter what role I've been in is key to me, because that's how you get people to buy into whatever you're doing, whether it's coaching or school psych or being a principal. So that's what it comes down to for me, and that hasn't changed no matter what role I'm in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been around you long enough where I've seen you really build great relationships with parents and students and referees, even for wrestling, and just you do a really good job of that. So props for that.
Thank you.
You're now the interim principal. What has been what does some of the work look like nowadays compared to what you were with the assistant principal?
Some of it is the same, which is nice, and I'm familiar with it because I was the assistant principal for 8 years, and now this is the 9th year in admin, and I'm the interim. But some's the same, but some is different too. There's some things I didn't know. I talked to the previous principal, and I said I got a new respect for you, because I didn't realize some of the things that you dealt with, and they're honestly some smaller things that people wouldn't even think of. With budgeting, with schedules, with approving time off, and all the littler things, and every single question in the building goes to you.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not another level. It just goes to you. So while that's rewarding because you get to affect some change because you're in charge, it's also a bit stressful at times. But I'm liking it. I really am liking it. I love Monroe High School. I love the staff that we work with. I think we got some really, really good people. And I tell people all the time, the students and kids in general in Monroe are really good, right? We talked earlier about, I still have friendships with previous people I've coached, like you, but also other students that I see out in the community. I mean, yes, we have some problems, right? We have some students that we always have problems with, but even them, like if you create a good relationship with them, I've had so many people come back after high school that I'll see, Walmart or wherever it is, and they might have been someone who was swearing at me in high school, but they're going to say hi to me out there,
Hmm.
and things change. Just because they're having a bad day in high school or a bad year in high school doesn't mean that they're a bad person. So that's how I treat that. But yeah, the principal gig, my biggest, I don't know if people know the story, but I didn't actually apply for the principal job when the other principal left. I have my family now is a mixed family. So my wife has 3 children of her own, and I have 2. They're all in all their different things and sports and activities and go in different ways. And I hold near and dear to my heart my family, and I don't want to give up opportunities to watch any one of them or participate in any one of their parts of their lives because I have to be at a high school event, because that's a big part of being a high school principal, is to be out and be visible and be as supportive as possible. And I'm going to do that. I'm doing that, but it's trying to balance that, right? I didn't want to have to go to, let's say, a basketball game or whatever it is, and go to a Monroe basketball game, which I really do want to go to because I want to support those kids and I love watching it, but not be able to go to my own kids' basketball game, right? That's a tough balance. So for me right now, the balance is okay. It's been going pretty good, and I've been able to go to both things, as much as possible. So that it's going better, but that was my number one worry, and that's why I did initially apply for it. But then some things happened over the summer where the principal that they did hire ended up not coming. So I ended up stepping in, and I guess the rest is history for right now. I got to figure out if I want to continue doing this long term, but right now I'm thinking I'd like to, because if I figure it out this year, why not? Right.
Right. Yeah, that has to be a big balance. I mean, like you said, having a presence at different events for the school is pretty important, just to show how vested the district is in whether it's sports or plays or whatever it is. But then having 5 children that you don't want to miss out on is
Right.
definitely a big balance for sure.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about Monroe in the school district, but we haven't really talked specifically about the school district of Monroe. Can you talk about kind of describe the student population and the culture at the school?
Sure. So currently we have, I think it's 741 students this year, which is down from when I started. I think when I started in 2001. Now, everybody remembers the past a little bit differently, right? But I think it was right around 900 students, and maybe a little higher in 2001. So we're down a little bit. But honestly, I don't think things have changed much. Like I said, we have really, really good kids, really involved kids. And that's one of our priorities, is trying to get students more involved in activities, clubs, whatever it might be. I do see our population changing a little bit because our town changes a little bit, right? Our high school is a reflection of our community. And I think our community, through COVID or whatever it might be, just like every other community in southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois, is struggling a bit with the economy and all that kind of stuff. So we're a reflection of that. But as far as the school itself, things are going really well with the kids. I think, like I said, I can't ask for more from the kids. I mean, they're working hard, they're involved. It's a fun place to be, I think, especially this year. We just had a big playoff game on Friday night for football. They made it to level 4 of the playoffs, so we're top 4 in the state. I mean, it can't be much more exciting than that right now. Haven't been since, I was told, 2000 was the last time they made it to level 4.
That's what I heard too. Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah. So now next Friday, traveling over to Muskego. I know the community will travel well. The students will travel well to go over there. And hey, we got as good a shot as any. We're playing Pewaukee again. Both of us are 5 seeds in our playoff bracket. Everybody can argue about whether it was seeded correctly or not, because both teams, us and Pewaukee, beat the number 1 seed pretty handily. So I think it should be a good game, and that kind of stuff, along with other sports being successful, whether it's swim, whether it's cross country or soccer or whatever it might be, that just creates a really good atmosphere. That's why we promote kids to get involved as much as possible, because, as you know, after you leave high school, there's not a whole lot of opportunity to be involved in fun, exciting things like that. You can go join a volleyball league or a softball league, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
So take advantage of that while you can. But yeah, I think the culture in the school is really good. It's becoming a bit more diverse, I would say, which is really good.
Mhm.
A lot of different experiences for kids, a lot of different students. So students are being exposed to different things and different ways of doing things, and I think that's a good thing. I think we need to open up our horizons a little bit and experience other things.
Yeah, for sure. I know Monroe has a lot of great traditions. We have with our sports successes over the years, we've had a lot of academic success. A lot of people come out of Monroe, go to college, and uh, do a lot of great things. It's just for me, Monroe's always been home. I grew up here. I went to school throughout here, and shortly after college, I came back, and I really only live a couple blocks away from the high school now. So it's such a great place to grow up and even build a life after. So I hope those enrollment numbers go up as we get more former Monroe people moving back home. That's part of the challenge too. Is we're probably not experiencing as many people moving back to Monroe as we had in previous years. So which affects the school district and the enrollment numbers as well.
Right.
So what are some of the more challenging and rewarding aspects of being in school administration for you?
Um, Challenging is, well, it's just like coaching, right? Is you're never going to make everybody happy,
Mhm.
right? I mean, it's challenging. So you got to keep your core principles in line of why am I here, right? And I'm here to my number one client is students, and student achievement and student success, and making sure that they're set up for whatever they want to do after high school, whether that's going straight into the job field, whether it's going into the trades or careers and getting a little extra training there, or go to the 2-year, 4-year college. I mean, that's really what we're looking at first and foremost. And underlying all of that is making sure that they're good human beings, right? I mean, I think that's not a curriculum or a class you take, but it's something that's in every class, that is in every teacher, every administrator, every staff member. So making sure, along with parents, because that's not our sole job, right? And parents are
Mhm.
big in that. But making sure that we put out some really good human beings who are going to be productive members of our society and who are as skilled as possible. So that's challenging. Is we all want that. Nobody would argue that, but the way it gets done sometimes gets argued, right?
Mhm.
So that's a challenge. But I think we can all, as a community, come to that common ground of this is what we want for our kids and our students. Um,
Yeah.
Success is, like I said, it's just having a good school to be in. We have a good, safe school. We have a good, safe community for the most part. Um, and I think people really do work together, and they do want that common goal of having good schools, of having good opportunities for students. Um, it's hard, probably harder than ever right now, to do anything, school included, in making movement on, I guess, whether you call it an initiative or a program or whatever, because I'm sure you see this too. Things are pretty polarized right now.
Mhm.
So it's hard because you don't want, it's hard to bring people together. People have different ideas of how things should be done and who should do it. Um, but I think we just got to keep coming back to that common guiding principle of what's our goal, what do we want, and I don't. There's hardly anybody that can argue that we want good for our community and for our students and for our families. So if we can do that and keep coming back to that and realize that we're not fighting against each other, right? We don't want different things.
Mhm.
Um, that's going to be super helpful, but it's tough right now. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. The environment we're living in right now is definitely it's tumultuous for sure. So,
Yeah.
the end goal I think for any school district should be, and for the community as well, should be the best thing for the students, the
Right.
best thing for the students to succeed in whatever they're trying to do. So,
Right.
yeah. So the high school is looking at some potential upgrades to
Yep.
to that, right? we're going to a referendum for that, correct?
Yeah, I think the plan is looking at fall of 2022, possibly. That's all up to the school board. I'm not
Mhm.
sure, but they were actually going to go and ask a question of the community as far as a referendum right before COVID happened. But then that all got put on hold, and the primary reason is the high school itself is just a really old and aging facility. The majority of the high school was built in 1958, I believe. That's what the sign on the front door says right out front of it. And it still looks beautiful. Honestly, if you don't look closely, don't look too closely. But
Mhm.
the custodial staff and the maintenance staff have done an amazing job over the years of keeping things looking nice as far as hallways and that kind of stuff. But a lot of the behind the scenes things that people don't see, the mechanicals, the I guess the underbelly of the school are failing,
Mhm.
and we're having a really hard time keeping things going as far as heating and cooling and leaking and water issues and mold issues and all kinds of stuff like that. So, and it's the high school, whether people want to admit it or not, is really the focal point of a lot of communities. You come into a community and you see this high school complex and with sports fields and a performing arts center and all this cool stuff. That makes people want to live there. That makes people proud of their town.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that we're not proud of the high school as it currently is, but there's a lot of issues. So I think if we had something that people could be more proud of, that we could open up and allow organizations and different people to host, whether it's hosting tournaments or hosting more plays or musicals, or even just like a music event in the
Mhm.
pack, and just have that be the hub of the community. I think that would be a really good thing. I go, and I don't know if you've seen, but I go to a lot of other high schools to see them, and some of their facilities are just amazing.
Mhm.
And when you walk in, you're like, wow. I'm like, if I was a student or a parent, like I'd want to be here.
Mhm.
So that's what I'd love to create. I know that's not up to me, but that's the kind of thing. That's the kind of reaction I want, is when people walk into our building, be like, wow, I want to be here. I'd like to learn here, or I'd like my kid to go here.
Mhm. Yeah, let's hope we get some upgrades or whatever to the school. I mean, um, it would definitely, I feel like, attract more people to attend events or bring more opportunities, like you said, for music events or more plays, businesses coming in and doing things. And
Yeah,
yeah, I think it would be really beneficial for
right.
the entire community to upgrade the facility.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And as part of those upgrades, Corey, I always have in the back of my mind that we're going to get a wrestling room.
good.
So no matter what we're doing, we're going to get a room dedicated to wrestling.
Yep. Right
Not
now
not a
it's
balcony.
Yeah, right now it's a balcony. It's behind the bleachers.
Yeah.
It's pretty narrow. I mean, there's so many times we slam into the walls and all that. So
Yeah.
that's good to hear.
Yeah, I thought that the bleachers are going to fall a few times because they just kind of rock back and forth and people run
Hmm.
into them. Yeah.
Especially us big guys on the big
Yeah.
side of the room, right?
Right. Right.
Oh, so you mentioned family. Family is a really important aspect of your life. Can you talk about the importance of family to you?
Yeah. I think, at the end of the day, while I love my job, right, I love doing what I do because I have so many relationships with students and staff and community members. You got to remember what's most important, and those people at home, um, because those people can't get replaced, right? They're your wife, they're your kids, they're your aunts and uncles, your grandpa and grandmas, your parents. Um, that's your family, and that's when I reflect all the time. I got to pull back and say those are the people most important to me. Not that I don't love you or the other wrestlers or kids in school or staff members. It's different,
Mhm.
right? Those people are always going to be with me when after I retire, hopefully, right?
Mhm.
And you only get so much time on this earth, and you got to spend that time with those people that matter the most. So it's a good balance of wanting to be the best principal, the best coach, the best whatever, with being a good dad, a good husband, a good person, right? I mean, That's something I always strive to be, because yes, I want people to know me as a really good person, as a principal or as a coach or whatever, but I'd really rather be known as a really good dad or a really good husband. That's what I'd rather be known as.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I just welcomed my second daughter into this world here, and just having kids in general changes your entire life perspective. It makes
Yeah.
you really value the relationships you have around you, and just for me, like that's my identity. When I went to college, I kind of lost my identity a little bit. I went from being a three-sport athlete to just a guy in college, and then
Yeah.
even until I became a dad, I feel like my identity was kind of ambiguous. But now, like, that's who I am. So I
Yeah.
definitely relate to that.
Yeah. You're not alone in that, Corey. A lot of people go through that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we've talked about Monroe, but we haven't really talked about why you came to Monroe and what's kept you here for 20 plus years.
Sure. Well, out of La Crosse, my obviously my family's from Edgerton, so I came back there. I did the work in the Hospital in Janesville. Um, I did my master's program in school psych, got that, and then I got a job offer up back by La Crosse, and I loved La Crosse because it's a beautiful area. But it was a Gale Ettrick Trempealeau school district, so I went up there, did an interview. They hired me, and then I had a friend who I went to La Crosse with, who was currently working in the Monroe School District. So Joe Monroe, I don't know if you know him. He had given me a call and said, "Hey, we have an opening in Monroe. What do you think?" And this was late. This was August, which is late in the hiring process before the school year starts. And so, the thought of, I really love La Crosse, but this is close to home, and I'm still living in Edgerton at the time, or closer to home. It's about an hour. So I went over and talked to him and accepted that job and broke my contract up there. And I guess the rest is history. That I'm here. I had no intention of staying here this long, but the community was super accepting of me. Like I said, when I first started this, it's not a whole lot different than Edgerton, just a little bit bigger. Had a lot of the same values, a really good place to be and raise a family. I know a lot of small towns can say that, but it really did. I mean, I felt accepted here right away. And I felt like it was a good place to be, and I had a lot of good friendships. And then, I think just like anything else, me getting involved, me taking on coaching and getting involved in the community, get involved in the school community, it helps you get connected and you feel like you're part of something. And I think everybody needs to feel like they're part of something, or as you said, you get a little bit lost. So for a long time, I felt like, and I still feel like, I'm part of something in Monroe, trying to build, whether it's a better team or a better high school or a better community. I think if we can all pull together as community members of Monroe, right, then it becomes a better place. So yeah, that's my story. I don't plan on leaving anytime soon. When I got married to Julie, I moved to Orangeville. So people give me a lot of crap about that, living in Illinois, including myself. But I'm still a Wisco boy through and through. But I always say that we should just notch out, a little bit of Wisconsin down around this town, because this town is just like Southern Wisconsin, right? And the people too, they're really great. So I found out that they're not all fibs. It's really probably so their distinction down here is they get it. They don't feel like it's fair that they get associated with the Chicagoland area, because it doesn't really represent them. So I see that now that I'm down here. There's a lot of good people, but I'm still across that line.
That is true. Yeah. Although Orangeville is only about 5 minutes from where my parents used to live. So it's pretty close for sure.
Well, it takes me like 10 minutes to get to work. It's just right up Carnell Road.
Yep. Well, we're grateful that you decided to come down to Monroe. You've definitely made an impact in this community through the wrestling program, through the school psychology work you've done, and obviously getting into school administration. You're making a big difference for our students here. So we're grateful you came down here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I have 3 rapid fire questions to ask, and then I have a final question to kind of wrap everything up. So first thing that comes to mind for these next 3 questions. What's your favorite restaurant in Wisconsin?
Ooh, a big supper club guy. I know you said Rapid, but there's a lot of good supper clubs.
Yeah.
I'm going to say the Hideaway. Have you ever been to the Hideaway?
Mm-mm.
It's over by Schallsburg. It's like a really out of the way place. It's great supper club. It's actually for sale if you're looking for another career.
Nice. I'll have to check that one out. What's your favorite event in Wisconsin?
Cheese Days. Cheese Days is a ton of fun. I love Cheese Days. I'm hoping we can get back to it.
Mm-hmm. I've had a lot of Monroe and Greene County area people on the podcast so far, and it's the top event for sure. Yeah. Just the fact that we get so many people in town to celebrate Cheese Days, and to me, it's almost like a reunion. You get so many people that are from Monroe who come back to that. So you walk around and you see people you haven't seen for 5-10 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Last rapid fire question. Where's your favorite place to hang out in Wisconsin?
Oh, I like Madison because I like hanging out with, especially Badger Saturdays. Mm-hmm. But I do like Milwaukee a lot. I'm a big brewer fan. So getting over there, we've been over several times and we stay overnight and then go to a game. There's just a lot of cool places to hang out and go to. And they really are starting to revitalize that little south of down. I don't think they call it Third Ward or something area, but it's a really cool place to hang out.
Yeah. I didn't go to a game this year, but I got to check out the newly branded AmFam field.
Yeah. I still call it Miller Park, but
everybody will for the next decade or so, probably.
Yeah.
All right. Final question for you, Coach. When all is said and done, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
I think I spoke to this a bit earlier, but basically being a good person, right? I mean, you can be saying, people say that he was a great principal or a great coach or a great whatever, but that should be because I'm a really good person that I cared, and hopefully, coached and inspired people to be better themselves, but that's not forgetting that I need to coach and take cues from others to be better myself. So, and along with that, just being a great family person, being the best dad I can be, being the best husband I can be. I think those things are more important than all of that, along with being a good person. That's the legacy I would like. It doesn't really matter to me if somebody says he was a great principal. It really doesn't. I mean, I hope if they say that, it's because of those other things, that I cared about people and that I had good relationships.
Yeah, that's a great legacy, Coach. Well, anything else you want to add before we wrap up here?
I don't think so. Other than, like I said to you earlier, I'm super proud of you for the journey that you've been on, and I hope that some of those lessons you're living right now are some lessons you learned earlier, in that perseverance and dedication. So, just super proud of you, Corey.
Thank you, Coach. Thanks for hopping on Wisco Legacy. This was great.